Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the mysterious world of Miss Minutes.
Oh boy.
You know that chipper, clock-faced character from the TVA in Loki?
Right, yeah.
We're going beyond the cartoon cuteness to answer the question that's been keeping you up at night. What is she, really?
And trust me, the answer might be more unsettling than even a rogue time variance authority.
We're dissecting a theory from new Rockstars Eric Voss about Miss Minutes' origins, her connection to temporal mechanics, and maybe even a few real-world historical mysteries along the way.
It's a doozy.
It is. So to kick things off, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the clock on the wall. We know Miss Minutes is sentient in some way, but she also has this physical weight, like she can interact with the physical world.
Yeah, it's one of the things that makes her so fascinating and unnerving at the same time.
Exactly. Remember when Loki swats at her with a magazine in season 1? You can hear her footsteps. That's not just animation magic.
No, it implies something more substantial is going on. Like she exists somewhere between a digital entity and something, well, more tangible.
And to make it even more interesting, her appearance changes between seasons.
Right. In the Season 2 trailer, we catch a glimpse of her during that scene at the 1893 World's Fair. And there's one striking difference. This earlier version of Miss Minutes has clock hands, something we don't see in the first season.
Okay, so is this literal clockwork we're talking about?
It's tempting to think so, isn't it? But this is the TVA we're dealing with. Time itself bends to their will. What if those clock hands are symbolic? The YouTube source points out that the VFX team drew inspiration from those classic 1950s cartoons, particularly the educational films about atomic energy. You know, the ones with those anthropomorphized atoms explaining fission and fusion. They even wanted her to leap off the screen at one point.
Oh, I remember those. Always started out so friendly and reassuring before you realize they're talking about the potential end of the world as we know it.
Precisely. And visually, Miss Minutes shares some uncanny similarities with those anthropomorphized atoms. It's almost as if her design is meant to subtly tap into that same vein of wonder and potential danger that defined our early understanding of atomic energy.
Okay, so we're talking about a character that's cute and cheerful on the surface, but with maybe some darker, more powerful undertones.
Exactly. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The theory suggests that the TVA itself isn't powered by atomic energy, but by something far more potent. Temporal radiation. Essentially, they found a way to weaponize time itself.
So instead of splitting atoms, they're splitting dot timelines.
That's the theory. Now let's connect this to the 1893 World's Fair incident. We meet Victor Timely, a Kang variant, and his big invention. It sparks and glows, much like, as the theory suggests, a demonstration of splitting the atom.
So this is potentially the moment that sets everything in motion.
The moment that births the TVA. But how does Miss Minutes fit into all of this? Is she a cheerful byproduct of this temporal tampering or something more?
Those are the million-dollar questions, and I think that's a perfect place to pick up in our next part. So we're talking about the birth of the TVA, their potential power source, and this whole idea of temporal radiation. But where does Miss Minutes fit into all of this? Is she a cheerful byproduct, or is there something more going on?
Well, and that's where the 1893 World's Fair gets really interesting.
Okay, so let's unpack this H.H. Holmes connection, because that's where this deep dive takes a turn from intriguing to downright creepy. What are the chances that a temporal anomaly at the World's Fair just happened to coincide with one of America's most infamous serial killers?
Right. It's almost too perfect, which makes you wonder if it was just a coincidence. The source suggests that perhaps those disappearances weren't all Holmes's doing.
I mean, not all of them were because of, like, his murder castle and all that?
Right. What if some were caused by dot complications from Timely's temporal experiment?
Okay, so like some kind of temporal accident, people just blinking out of existence because of this new technology.
And by pinning the blame on Holmes, the nascent TVA had the perfect cover story to swoop in, clean up, and ensure no one ever suspected the truth about what was really going on.
Whoa. So instead of just being formed sometime after that point in history, the TVA might have actually been born from that event at the World's Fair.
And if that's true, then all bets are off.
It's enough to make you want to dig into the historical archives yourself and see what really happened to those missing people.
Right. And imagine the implications.
Yeah.
If the TVA was literally built on that foundation of temporal chaos and covered up disappearances, it paints a much darker picture of their whole operation.
And if Miss Minutes a manifestation of that temporal energy they're harnessing, then she's not just a mascot, but potentially, a byproduct, a witness.
Or even a guardian. Think about those 1950s educational films again.
Yeah.
Those anthropomorphized atoms weren't just there to explain science. They were there to make something powerful and dangerous seem appealing, even trustworthy.
You're saying Miss Minutes is the TVA's, like, public relations campaign, a way to soften the image of an organization that literally erases timelines and rewrites reality.
It's certainly a chilling thought, isn't it? And it plays into the unsettling feeling we get whenever Miss Minutes is on screen. She's always so chipper, so eager to please, but there's this underlying sense that she knows a lot more than she's letting on. Almost like those cheerful PSAs about duck and cover drills during the Cold War.
Okay, I have chills. So, if we entertain this theory that she's more than just an AI assistant, what does that make her? Is she a sentient being trapped in a temporal energy form? Does she have free will?
That's a question we keep circling back to, and it's one that the source material doesn't definitively answer. But if she is a being of pure temporal energy, it stands to reason that she experiences time differently than we do. Maybe she doesn't see time as linear, with the past, present, and future.
So she's not bound by the same rules of time as everyone else.
Right, maybe she experiences it all at once.
That is both amazing and terrifying to contemplate. But it would explain why she always seems one step ahead, why she always seems to know what's coming next.
And let's not forget those fleeting glimpses of her physicality. The footsteps when Loki swats at her, the way she interacts with the real world. If she's a manifestation of temporal energy, then those moments where she displays weight and substance take on a whole new meaning. It's like seeing a ghost momentarily solidify in front of you.
Speaking of ghosts in the machine, remember that earlier version of Miss Minutes? The one with the clock hands? What if those hands aren't just a visual quirk? What if they're a clue to her evolution, or maybe even her devolution? Okay, I need a minute to process all of this. We've gone from a cheerful cartoon clock to a potential embodiment of temporal energy, a witness to the TVA's creation, and maybe even a ghost.
And isn't that the beauty of this deep dive? We're left with more questions than answers, but they're the kind of questions that make you rethink everything you thought you knew.
About the TVA, about time itself.
Right, and about Miss Minutes' role in all of it.
It's like she's a puzzle box, and those clock hands are just the first layer. What if her appearance is tied to the TVA's control over time? Maybe as their control solidifies, she becomes more anchored to their specific version of reality, losing those clock hands that visually connect her to a more fluid, chaotic state of temporal energy.
Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe those hands are a sign of her growing power, her connection to the true nature of time, which is far more chaotic and unpredictable than the TVA wants us to believe.
Okay, now my head is really spinning. So let's bring this back to our listeners. After diving deep into the origins of Miss Minutes, exploring the connections to the 1893 World's Fair, and grappling with the implications of temporal radiation, what do we make of her? Is she a friend, a foe, a neutral entity, just trying to navigate a reality-bending bureaucracy?
Honestly, I think that's the most unsettling part of all. We simply don't know. She might be a loyal servant of the TVA, of being born from their manipulation of time and completely beholden to their directives. Or, and this is the truly chilling thought, she might be something far more ancient, something that predates the TVA and is simply biding its time, observing, waiting for the right moment to, well, let's just say we hope she never has a reason to unleash the full extent of her power.
Because if she does, it might not just be a single timeline that gets pruned, it might be the whole darn multiverse.
And that brings us to the ultimate question, the one that I think everyone listening is probably wondering. If you had just 15 minutes alone with Miss Minutes, what would you ask her?
Oh, that's easy. I'd ask her to show me what really happened at the 1893 World's Fair. No more TVA spin, no more cover-ups, just the raw, unvarnished truth. What do you think, listeners? What secrets do you think Miss Minutes is hiding behind that cheerful clock face?
Let us know on social media, and be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the sources we've discussed today. Until next time, keep diving deep and never stop questioning the nature of time itself.